Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Community Infrastructure Service Committee meeting. We are going to move along quickly today. We consent items, I'm going to bypass those because we do have a delegation that needs to be seen first. But before that, Councillor Gazzola, you have a comment you wanted to make.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I wanted to, and I was hoping all the members of council were here, I wanted to publicly apologize for a comment I made at the last meeting. When I made the comment, Councillor Singh did refer to it, but because of the lateness of the hour, I didn't want to respond to it and carry it further. When I apologized to Councillor Singh later in the meeting in private, he suggested that I should have done so publicly, and he's right. Okay. In the discussion this morning, I referred to Councillor Singh's nasty amendment. Okay, that's not the word I was looking for, but I had a senior's moment. What I was looking for was an unfriendly amendment. That's the word. That's somewhat like nasty. Thinking that unfriendly amendments are dealt with differently. Well, they're not. And that was the only reason I gave it that connotation. So it was a bad choice of words, and for that I regret it, and now apologize. And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Fernandez? Thanks.
I just wanted to make note that the reason that some of us are wearing the shirts today was for the Maple Syrup Festival yesterday, our Kitchener Saturday, thank you. The Kitchener Fancy Flippers made it to the second round with a good win. We actually beat the other team for the very first time in the last 3 years, so we had a good fun, and I hope that some of you will join us next year.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Yeah, I'll just add that it's been, I think, since 2000 since we last won the SAP bucket. So the fact that we got to the second round is a step towards hopefully not having to take as long as the Maple Leafs have waited to get the Stanley Cup again.
Well, we do have a couple of new draft picks on our council, so that okay. So with that, we are going to go to our discussion items. Item number 5, sorry. I'm going to skip that, bypass that until later. We're going to go straight to discussion items. Community grants, and we have Kathleen Woodcock, who's going to present staff's report. We will be doing consent items afterwards.
Thank you. We're pleased to be here today to provide the staff recommendations to Council for the Community Grants Tier 2 for 2015. I want to thank the city staff for their assistance, and especially thank the community representatives on the committee. I'll name them, they're maybe not here quite yet. We're starting earlier or whatever. Dawn Bourgeois, Janet Mayu, Georgina DeBarros, and Marcia Huber for their valued assistance in ensuring that these recommendations presented today are within budget and reflective of the assessment criteria for Community Grants Tier 2. Tier 2 community grants are intended to assist groups that provide services for Kitchener residents in the areas of arts and culture, special events, sports and recreation, and community support and development. This funding stream is for emerging, usually smaller groups, to provide assistance with an event that they are starting or another activity that fits the primary criteria. In January 2015, Council approved a grant budget of just over $2 million, including $192,868 for the Tier 2 grants program. The process for Tier 2 grants is that of an application, assessment, and recommendation cycle. The process that brings us here today began in November 2014 with a public information session. By December 5th, 2014, which was the application to apply, the deadline to apply, we had received 61 applications with total requests of just over $422,000. This year, Staff implemented a pilot online application process for the Tier 2 program. While some applicants expressed minor difficulties with the online system, overall, moving to a paperless application resulted in efficiencies of time and resources for both the applicants and for the review committee. And so staff are planning to utilize an online application process again next year. The Peer and Staff Review Committee reviewed each grant application in detail using established criteria and made decisions on grant allocations within budget availability. Staff and committee volunteers spent approximately 20 to 25 hours each reviewing the applications for a total of 200 to 250 hours. As well, the committee met twice for a total of 7 hours to make the final recommendations. In February 2015, all of the applicants were notified of the recommendations we are bringing forward today, and those recommendations are shown in Appendix B of your staff report, and provided with an invitation to attend today's meeting if they wanted to appeal the recommendation on their grant request. This year, only one group requested the opportunity to appear today, and that's the Somali Canadian Association of Waterloo Region. It's important to note that the diversity of knowledge and expertise on the Peer and Staff Review Committee and the detailed review process ensures that each application is considered in context with all other applications when we're determining which request should be recommended for funding. This report also recommends the transfer of several groups from the Tier 2 to the Tier 1 grant process. The Council-approved Community Investment Policy, I-525, states that groups receiving Tier 2 funding can be considered for Tier 1 funding after having received support from the City of Kitchener for 5 years or more. In order to receive Tier 1 funding, the groups must also be incorporated or agree to become incorporated within a specified time frame as a not-for-profit corporation, and they must enter into a legal agreement with the city that outlines the responsibilities of both parties. Staff is recommending that 12 groups be approved to move to the Tier 1 grant process effective the 2016 grant year. Those groups are named in the recommendation on Folio 5-1 of the staff report. If approved, these groups will move to Tier 1 in 2016 with a base grant amount equal to their 2015 Tier 2 grant, and there will be a corresponding reduction in the amount available for Tier 2 grants in 2016. The total of such a transfer is $56,475. Such a move benefits both the groups and the city. The groups can leverage the Tier 1 agreement to seek support from other funders. The city can budget more accurately knowing the terms in the multi-year agreements. For both parties, roles and responsibilities are spelled out clearly and agreed to. There's a more rigorous process of accountability, which helps to mitigate risk to the city. As well, insurance specifications protect both the groups and the city. The budget for 2015 Community Grants Tier 2 is $192,868. Staff note that the 2015 Tier 2 budget is almost double the Tier 2 funding available in 2009. The Peer and Staff Review Committee is recommending a total allocation of $190,765. The cost to place an ad in Kitchener Post was $634, leaving a balance of $1,469 unallocated. Should staff approve Tier 2 grants of more than the budgeted amount shown on the screen, alternative funding sources will need to be identified, or other Tier 2 grants will need to be reduced by a corresponding amount, or the city will run a deficit in grant funding for 2015. In summary, we have two recommendations before you today. that 2015 community grants Tier 2 in the amount of $190,765 be approved as outlined in report number CSD 15-024, and that 12 organizations be approved to move to the Tier 1 grant process effective 2016 grant year. The organizations are listed in the recommendation on folio 5-1 of the staff report and on the screen. Now, at this point, I would ask that Don Bourgeois come forward and say a few words about his experience with the committee. He's one of the community reps.
Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Thank you. First, it's one of those experiences, I've done it 2 or 3 years now. It's one of those experiences that I think everybody who participates in these type of volunteer activities finds is that you get a lot more out of it than you're actually thinking you're bringing to the table. To find out about all the important things that community groups and others are doing in our community is absolutely fascinating and thrilling. The other part is to give staff strong credit is the ability to guide us through the process is an important part, and the continuity of staff and the involvement of staff. And there are some strong discussions, as there are around the horseshoe here as well over issues. But we find a consensus in order to try and meet, and this is my third point, to try and meet the guidance or the direction that Council has provided. And certainly as a community member, I find that that guidance of what is important to Council for the community, reflecting Compass Kitchener and other inputs, is critical for us to make our decisions. And so the policies that are put in place, that are articulated in the materials that come to us and go to the community groups as to what is important, what types of things are to be funded, is absolutely essential, and that we take that very seriously to try and come to grips with a balance of recommendations to Council to move forward. And finally, on this, the new process that was put in place using a Kitchener-based company, software company, made my life personally a lot easier to do with going through the materials than having a pile of paper this thick. And so the electronic version was something that was very effective. I think we all saw some hiccups in there, as you do with the first time, but it was an extremely useful and I think a much more cost-effective approach to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Councillor Gazzola, do you have questions to staff, or is that Mayor Verbanov, is it to staff?
Just wanted to publicly thank Don and the entire group that's been part of the grant review process for their work. I know countless hours go into making it happen, and it's not easy to have to make those choices and advise Council. So I just wanted to express our thanks to him and the rest of the selection committee.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez, is it a question to staff?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take the delegation first because there's some time constraints. Okay. So if the delegations wish to come to appear, I'm not sure which individuals you guys are. Aiden Matan, Mohammed Mirsal, Gina Sadik, Bashir Abdi. Welcome, gentlemen. You have, pursuant to Council's direction, that each delegation has 5 minutes to voice their concerns or their issues. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mohammed Mursal, the Vice President of Somali Canadian Association, and here is my colleague, Bashir Abdi, who is also one of the board directors. We were 4 delegation members. The other 2, Aden and Guinea, could not make it. I will talk about our appeal in 3 stages. I'll first talk about the association a little bit and what the association is doing. I'll make a little bit of correction about the grant application, and then finally we'll talk about our appeal. So the Somali Canadian Association of Waterloo Region has been running a number of programs, to be exact 7 programs for the last 4 years. We have soccer program at Sandhill Public Schools and Townshend WT Townshend Public Schools on Saturdays. And about 100 kids, mostly boys, are involved in that program. Townshend is mostly below the age of 13, and Sandhill is below the age of between 14 and 17. We have basketball program at Air Kaufman. We have English classes, literacy classes for mothers, especially newcomers mothers, and we are doing this with partnership with the district school board, who give us 4 teachers. And we also have the annual or seasonal soccer tournaments. We do the annual tournament in the last weekend of the March break. We had one the previous weekend. And we had 8 teams participating in that tournament, a number of teams coming from Toronto, Hamilton, and a couple also local teams. We have also the graduation ceremony, heritage and graduation ceremony, that we have been doing for these last 4 years, last 3 years, and this year we'll do it again in June. The graduation ceremony has had a significant impact on the Somali high school kids' graduation rate. It not only motivating them, but all the parents coming together and then having somebody to talk about the engagement level and motivational level, and talking both about the opportunities they have and also the challenge they have, had a significant impact, I would say, on the participation, especially the education participation. We had a number of city councils who are here, who have been attending those events, and I'm talking about over 200 people coming, sometimes 300 people coming, and to me that was something great and something that has been, and we see the results. Some of our current board members are some of the students who graduated in the last 2 years. So we see not only the education component of it, but also the civic engagement for many youth members of the Somali community. And we have also the community barbecue events, come together events, especially during the Eid days or the summer times. So that was a summary. I could not go in details about the impact of the program, the success of it, the challenge of it. Of course, it has its own challenge, but time will not allow me to talk about that. So that's a little bit about the programs the association is running. There's a slight correction about the grant. Now I'm coming to the correction I was talking about. We have 17,000 cash as the amount we were requesting, but it's actually 15,000. That was the original amount we requested, and it stays that amount. There was a letter we sent talking about extra 2,000, but that was supposed to be reflected on our expenses portion of the application and not the actual amount or the amount of cash we were requesting from the city. Now, coming back to the decision by the review committee, we appreciate when, as already has been mentioned, I'm sure all these decisions were made in a context, and we realized the note, reading the note the review committee made, there is that assumption that the decision was made on the assumption that we are 100% or we will be 100% reliable on the city funding, that we don't have other external funding, and there is a question of sustainability. To be honest, that's not the case. We have been running this program for 4 years, and it's only last year that we got money from the city. So we had community members donating, we had local business stores donating.
You have 30 seconds, but that's okay. Go ahead.
And yeah, so it's the question of sustainability should not be a concern. We just need this money to give the program momentum, the strength. It is in the building stage. It enhances our efficiency, like the 10,000 we got from the city last year, added to the quality and the participation. Well, my phone is even against me. Added to the participation members and the quality of the program. So this money is not for continuous thing. It's just to give us that momentum, that strength, and we should be able to be sustainable. Thank you.
Okay. We do have a couple questions for you, gentlemen. Councillor Gazzola, is yours? Okay, go ahead. I'll ring you back in.
Yeah, I wanted to understand, and you've answered part of the questions. You've been doing this for 4 years. How did you manage the first 2 or 3 years? You haven't come here for a request previously.
Yeah, when we started these programs, of course, we didn't have any history of running programs along this, so it was difficult for us to approach big donors or to say this and that. But we were approaching local business owners and many community members, and that's how we were running the program. Some of the soccer programs literally asking the mothers to donate some money. Some of the food, the mothers would donate some of their time, some of their cash, and also make the food for the players.
Well, what's wrong with continuing with that practice?
Well, there is, and we just want to diversify our sources of time and also money. We just don't want to have only one channel. So like last year, that's why we didn't ask the local community members and the local business to donate, because we had a little bit of money from the city. So it was kind of a break for them. And it is that window, that section where we didn't get external funding, that is reflected only in our grant application.
This soccer tournament that you have, why don't your participants take part in the regular Kitchener Minor soccer program, which is a program that receives considerable funding from this council? Why do we need to have a special group? And from my understanding, you said it was held in March. It would mean that it would have to have been something that was held indoors and therefore quite more expensive.
Well, I'll answer that number of questions in that one question. For the participation part, we have a number of newcomers, and we have a wide range of also ages within that. So it is an issue of accessibility for the Kitchener teams, and we know a lot of those kids cannot afford don't have that easy access to that, and this is a kind of transition for them to integrate, to also see those other opportunities, to introduce them to the other teams existing in the city. And that's what we are doing, because we had local teams coming up. So it's not only for the Somali community or a particular group, but it's an engagement and creating more networks for the Somali youth and also the youth within the city.
But why have this in the wintertime? Why not have it in the summertime when it's
We do seasonal tournaments in the summertime, but in the wintertime, this is something a lot of them, especially the newcomers, are looking forward to. A lot of them don't play winter sports. So it's something they are talking about from the beginning of December, in January through February. It's something they are looking forward to. And that we could say we only do it in the summer, and we know it's expensive to do it in the winter, but we feel that's a need. Like we have to do it, or it needs to be done during that time. That's when they need some sort of sports.
So are you expecting now to come to the city every year for additional funding?
No. As I said earlier, we have been doing this is our 4th year, and we are always finding ways to run this, and we have seen the benefits of it, the impact it had on our youth. So it's not, we are not very concerned about the sustainability of it, but we need this money now to give us more momentum, more strength, and to expand our participation levels, to get also leadership skills from the coaches in the city, from the referees in the cities, leadership groups. So it is building our capacity so that we can grow. It's not to sustain us. This is for growth and expansion and for improvement, and not for sustainability.
So that I gather you won't be coming here next year for additional funding. Now the other thing is you've asked for 17, 18, 19,000. I'm not sure, and you've only been awarded 3,000 by the committee. What does that mean then?
We asked for 15,000, and there was an additional projected expense, 2,000, that we wanted to be reflected on our expense portion of application. You mentioned, I didn't get the portion of the 3,000.
No, I'm saying at best, it looks like you're going to get 3,000. You want 15, 17,000. What are you going to do?
Well, that's why we're here to see if we can get more than 3,000. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll have to figure out something else. We have to check other doors. We have to check other channels and look for ways to get that money and see these programs running.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have some more questions, gentlemen, so hold on tight. Councillor Paul Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And some of my questions have been answered through Councillor Gazzola. Can you reiterate, so obviously you said that if the City of Kitchener were to say no to the increased funding, that you will go out and access other funding sources. But are you able to articulate, if we were to say no, is there something off this list of things that you're projecting and wanting to do next year that you will not be able to do at all? Or do you think that there are funding sources, they will be available to you once you seek them out?
Well, we are not sure at the moment. We don't know of any other money at the moment, and that's the reason we appealed this, and we thought we will talk to you guys about how we need this money. But if we don't get the money, it doesn't mean the programs will be paralyzed and they will not be there. Hopefully, we will put more effort, we'll work harder and harder to see if
No, that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
through your comments or answers to the earlier question, it just seemed like we came to you first, but then if not, we'll go elsewhere. But I wanted to see if that's really even a viable option or not, or does it most likely that if you don't get the increased funding, that these programs won't take place?
It's going to be tough. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but it's tough. The possibility, there is always possibility, but I don't see easy channels, or not easy, but I don't even see it there now. We have to scratch our heads and brainstorm and see what are remote resources that are there that we don't see at the moment. But for now, we don't.
Other than the City of Kitchener, have you already tied down any other funding? Other than even the recommended 3,000, let's look at that first. Do you have established other funding for the going year?
We got 3,000 funding from United Way and KW Counseling last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have they already agreed again for next year? For this year?
Not this year.
Have
we'll
they declined, or you haven't made that application yet?
We didn't do the application for this year because the period for the previous grant was ending this year. So it will be the end of this year that will again.
So you have that funding already. You'll be applying again next year then?
No, it's not guaranteed. This is the option of the fundings are there for programs like ours. We don't have it this year, but next year we will apply. That's
okay.
Yeah, so it's not there. Yeah.
You have to make that application. Okay, last question for your homework program, and this is really good work that you guys do, and I completely understand the comments that you made, the aspect of language as a barrier, and for newcomers just wanting to be more engaged and busy or active in the winter time. So that makes sense with your answer. But the cost related to cost basis, two coordinators, 4 hours a week, is that at $25 an hour? Is that what it means, or?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys don't have the capacity to have that expertise or volunteerism within the community that can assist with a homework program, as well as more the soccer more than anything?
We have volunteers running the programs. There are a lot of volunteers, and we need us. All the programs are run by volunteers, but the coordinators are the one putting the organization together. For example, the soccer programs, in the evening we have 4 programs running at all the sites, but there's only one coordinator for the sports that we pay. So we are not paying the people running the program. We are just paying the person overseeing and making sure everything is under control.
Okay, all right. I have a question. Thank you, gentlemen. I have a question of staff as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Put you in the queue. Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you very much, and thank you to both you, Mohammed, and Bashir, for coming in today. One of the things I'm familiar with is that many years ago, the association ran a homework program as well. Do you know how that was funded back then?
It is the same program that we are running,
Right.
and we didn't have. We just used to get some money from some of the parents and also from local business owners. That's how we were running it. It's only this year, last year, 2014, that we had paid coordinators, and the number increased. There was some kids some of the families we could not. Everyone could not access because of the lack of that space and lack of adequate supervision. We had volunteers, but still I'm talking of 40 kids below the age of 14 in spaces, and we have to respect the rental standards, and it is tough. So yeah, it is the same program we have been running 2 years ago, but the membership has increased. We have more participants, and the participants are not only Somalis. Yes, everyone in those neighborhoods who come to these programs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you approached any of the schools to see if they could assist you in any way in terms of supporting the program?
Yeah, definitely. We have big partnership with the district school board. Principals of Air Kaufman is a big support for this program. I would say they are playing a significant role. Like when we have the mothers come in for the English classes, they offered 2 staff from the district school board to babysit. So not only the kids who are taking the homework program, but they also provided other staff to help us with the kids in the kids' room. So definitely, yeah, we have a number of individuals from the district school board who are helping us with this.
Okay. And you said you haven't really pursued other funding sources this year. Some because you're like the United Way, because your year crossed from one year to the next, so you'll wait till next year to apply. Have you talked to, like, I mean, these programs are running out of Chandler Moe, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Have you talked to any of our staff there in terms of any other ideas around funding sources?
Not directly about money sources, but also support. Without the money, how they could help us, like space creation. We had a meeting with some of the staff at Chandler Moe Community Center, and there were a number of university students also coming in and see if we could have more connections between the youth who graduated from that neighborhoods and in now post-secondary institutions, and see if they can mentor. So we are we are always in contact with people in the community centers, with the district school boards, sometimes not only for money, but also for space, for other opportunities.
Okay, thank you. I just want to also acknowledge the great work that I know you've been doing for a number of years with the youth and others in the community, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you. And certainly you have been keeping extremely busy with helping your community transition into their new country. Some of the questions that were asked, I don't want to re-ask them. I see you've partnered with the school board, and that's a great partnership. Have you talked to the Minor Soccer Association at all in partnering with them for?
Yeah, we had Kitchener. I attended a number of meetings with the Kitchener soccer leaders, and Bashir here is also the coach of. Now he's the board of directors. He's no longer the coach, but before he joined the board, he was the coach of the soccer team. And yeah, definitely we have leadership meetings with them, and also how we. Like our referees and some of our sports leadership members come from other teams in the city.
Okay, I noticed that you have like a general membership, and you have a membership fee of $20 every 2 years. Could you give us an understanding of how many members you have within your group that are paying membership fees?
Every 2 years we hold an election, and we have a new board of directors, 9. It's $20 for people voting, and that amount is decided by the Council of Elections, election board, so not the directors, and it varies from year to year. Especially like this year, in a week or so, we have election coming on April 11th, and we have realized that a number of students now, and a good significant number of the members who are active as students, and that might not be welcoming to them. So it's reduced to 10, so it varies. But for membership, we have everyone who is residing in KW area, and Somali by definition is a member, but and for participation, anyone residing in the area can participate, but for the amount, the people making that contributions are those who are willing to do it and can afford it during the election time.
Okay.
Once every 2 years, yeah.
Okay, so you don't really have an understanding of how many paid members you have? Because
Yeah.
really you want it to be open up to to the entire community, right?
Yeah, and it varies from year to year. It could be 100 people coming to pay. It could be 40 people coming to pay, and yeah, we don't have a fixed number.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I have a question for staff too.
Thank you.
I have you in the queue. Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, welcome to City Council. You're doing great work. Your program, is it strictly for Somali kids?
No, its participation, as I have mentioned earlier, is for any kid who is in that neighborhood. And we have our soccer programs, our homework programs are very diverse. We have participants from all the residents in those particular neighborhoods. Yeah.
Okay. And I believe the mayor asked you about boards of educational schools. Do you get direct cash for your homework programs from either Board of Education?
No.
Have you asked? Seems like an obvious...
We talked to them about funding, but they say they will pay for the teachers who help them, the mothers with the English classes, and then the other early childhood teachers who are taking care of the smaller kids. So kind of paying us indirectly by sending us teachers, but no direct cash.
Okay. And you work closely with Chandler Mowat. I believe there's a homework program or a similar program at Mill Cortland. Are you aware of that? Or?
There is the
At Mill Cortland?
Laurentian Pathways program, homework program, but that's for only high school.
That's the one I'm thinking of, Pathways. That's
Yeah.
just for high school?
Yeah, it is for only high schools, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. No further questions from committee. You can have a seat.
Thank you very much.
So questions to staff, we have Councillor Gazzola up first.
Okay, I'm going to start with, on page 539, this organization shows a Kitchener City Hall CDIP revenue of $10,000. What is that?
The Community Development Infrastructure Program that Mark is responsible to operate, and he can answer any questions.
Can somebody tell me what what it's all about? Or
You're buzzed in.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Generally speaking, the Community Development Infrastructure Program, the purpose of the grants to provide money to community groups, could be neighborhood associations, could be communities of interest, to take action on issues that they have identified in their community. So it looks at how the main objective is to strengthen the networks within their own communities to develop stability, cohesion.
what budget does this come from?
This is a budget that is in the capital program, so it falls within my capital budgets. There's an amount of $10,000 per year provided for distribution of a one-time grant of up to $10,000.
So is that amount that I'm referring to, is that 2015 or 2014?
The amount that was provided to the association was 2014 funds.
And is there another similar amount in 2015?
In 2015, that amount will be directed to the House of Friendship. They applied for that amount, and $10,000 will be going to the House of Friendship.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of other questions to the other staff. From what I'm seeing, there's first, I noticed that there's an increase in the budget this year of almost 10% over last year. I thought we were working on little tighter budgets than that. How were you able to get a 10% budget allocation increase?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would remind Council that the increase for the grants program is for the program as a whole, so it accounts for Tier 1, Tier 2 together. Staff prioritized Tier 2, recognizing that we've heard loud and clear from councillors that you wanted to see the Tier 2 pot grown, and so it was grown.
Okay, that's fine. So what did the total grants increase by?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's 1.5%, but I can confirm that, or Ms. Willems has always got the right answer, I think.
No, that's fine. It was in that neighborhood. The other question, though, that we are now going to have 56,000 going into Tier 1, and they're almost all automatically guaranteed that, right? Right?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, then now we're going to be 56,000 short here. So where's that going to come from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's the one item that I have really looked into, and why I'm satisfied is because, yes, the funding will be going, but so will all of those community groups. So they'll no longer be applying for Tier 2.
But there'll be others.
Well, our experience has been, yes, there will be others asking. There's not always that many who are going to actually qualify given council's criteria.
All right, I'll go along with that, although that doesn't, if you look on page 5.5, that doesn't really show it that way. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks. My question was mainly for Dan Chapman, but maybe Mr. May can answer it. During the budget deliberations, I kept harping on this one particular fund, the Safe Community Fund, and there was an existing balance. Is there any opportunity for us to use any of that funding for something like this as a one-time, similar to what the Community Development Infrastructure Program that Mr. Hildebrand was talking about?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I'm understanding the grant you're asking about it's the funding that has been allocated to the Safe and Healthy Community Advisory Committee. It is their responsibility to determine how they're going to use that money. They certainly have a clear grant program with criteria, and so I can't speak to whether or not that grant program would fit for this or whether they would accept it. It's certainly an avenue, but that really is for that committee to manage.
And I agree with you. So I'm not talking about that same funding. So that question may have to wait. And if Mr. Chapman comes back, it was something I had. Thank you for trying to answer, though.
Mr. Hildebrand, you have a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I can provide some clarification. That money was set aside to implement the youth strategy. So there are funds within that account, but that's being used for things like apathy is boring. It's more for the engagement of youth. So if we were to take money from that account, it would limit what we could do to continue to engage our youth, which is also a priority for us.
But my understanding from Mr. Chapman was that some of that money was also allocated to some smaller projects at Chandler Mowat as well. So it might be best if Mr. Chapman sort of fills everybody in on where I thought the youth audit was almost completed, and that's why there was existing funds left over. But I stand to be corrected. I just wanted to, if we're going to add any additional grants, then I thought that would be the appropriate fund to take monies from. So he's back, so I'll hold on.
If Mr. Chapman can rush to his chair and he can repeat your question.
Thanks, Mr. Chapman. During budget deliberations, I kept harping on this one particular fund, that there was an existing balance, the Safe City Fund. Some of that funding went to the youth audit, and some of it was also reflected, I believe, in the email you sent me, to something to do with the Chandler Mowat. If we were to ask to draw some more funding, could we draw any of the funding from that account, or has it been completely depleted at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if Mr. Hildebrand's already responded or not, but he was the one that had identified the projects that were being funded from the account. So he would be in the best position to comment on whether or not that balance has been fully committed. It was, as I understand it, not an ongoing funding source, so really the balance is the limit of funding. Whether or not those projects are exhausting the funding, I can't comment on.
Okay. And I was asking in terms of having it as a one-time fund, but okay, I guess I've got my answer from all three of you. Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah. So my question was, for an organization like this, does this fit under the mandate for a community improvement grant? Could they make an application to that? Michael?
Yeah, for you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, organization like this, would they be able to make an application to our community improvement grant? Does an organization like this fit under that criteria?
I'm not quite sure which grant you're referring to. I'm sorry. Oh, the neighborhood matching grant?
Matching grant with the United Way that we have.
You know, that I can't speak for it because it has a committee of the United Way and staff who would evaluate the application. I would tell you it's only a one-time grant. My initial reaction is that that this program wouldn't sit with the intent of what that matching fund was about. But again, there is an application process for that, and I wouldn't want to prejudge how a committee might evaluate it.
Mr. Hildebrand, you have something to add?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the most significant piece of the Neighborhood Matching Funds grant that would limit the ability is that it's very specific to neighborhood-specific events and things like that. So whereas this sounds like it's across the city, this Neighborhood Matching Funds grant is specifically for neighbors doing things in their neighborhood rather than a community of interest. So I think that's the one thing that would make it difficult to see this being a...
That's fine. So staying with that, Mr. Hildebrand, with the Safe and Healthy, probably the same thing, or would that, you probably remember the term of reference a little more than I can.
Sure, and through the Safe and Healthy grant, that's called the Belonging Grant, and I think that it fits more into that grant for sure. As Mr. May indicated, that is something that is not overseen by staff, but by the committee itself, and also it has an upwards limit of $2,000.
No,
so
I remember
it's
that part.
A small amount.
I realize that it's not under our mandate or our decision. Privy to award that, would it be inappropriate if council or committee were to send a recommendation back to that committee saying that, council would be supportive or favorable? I'm asking.
I think
through you, Mr. Chair, I think inappropriate is a strong word. I certainly would not encourage you to do that. You've empowered this committee to allocate these funds, and I think you need to let them do that.
That's why I asked. Sometimes I don't know what's appropriate.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Mayor Verbanovich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and some of my other colleagues have tried to go after some of the pots that I thought might be available as well. But I guess I'm looking at in terms of some of the dollars we specifically now allocated for that neighborhood. And I know some of that is specifically tied to partnerships with partner organizations and so on. But are there any dollars that were targeted for the neighborhood that potentially could go to further supporting this group? Or, I mean, is any of it fit in within our like, I presume none of what's being looked for here money-wise is things like access to space and so on, because they would have that through the normal partnership with us. Mr. Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if there was a request for access to space, then I would assume that staff would consider it in context of everything else that's going on at the facility. So that's always a discussion point that we can have with the organization. As it pertains to if there's any other resources that we have in our efforts to look at that community, we don't have any allocation of funds specifically for programs, and we're looking to our partners for programs that are coming out of that. So outside of the actual programming that we're doing in the facility, anything in addition, we're looking to our partners to assist with us. So we don't have any funding directly associated with that.
So could we work with the group to help connect them with some potential partners that might help them with some of these areas?
We certainly could. We certainly could look at that. Yes.
Okay. And I guess maybe the last question I have, and this maybe goes back to the delegation, if I can. But have you ever approached Nutrition for Learning or the food bank to see if they might help with some of the snacks or and so on that you're looking for? Yeah. You can just come back down.
Can you
Sorry.
just step on down to the podium, please? Mohammed, thanks.
Yeah, we had 3 years ago. We had some food and snacks come from them, but it was only for an event. And in our current application, there's reference to snack, but that one is for the homework program, because we realize some families don't send their kids to the program with light food or snacks, while others do. So, yeah, we did that 3 years ago, but we haven't done it recently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Galloway-Sealock?
Yes. I think I read in the report that there's an unallocated amount of $14.69. Is that correct? Yeah. So we have the ability, if we want to increase any of the grants, but this one specifically, we have that much money to play with without finding any other source of funding. That's correct? Mr. Chair, I have a motion to that effect that I'll bring forward at the appropriate time.
Okay. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, and I just want to commend your group. It sounds like you're doing a lot of great work to support the members of the community, and it does sound like it is taking place in just a couple of neighborhoods, not necessarily across the city. Is that correct? So I apologize for asking questions to the delegation after they sat down, but I just want to ask if I guess it's of staff. Can we direct staff to work with the staff people at the neighborhood associations that are and the community centers that are affected, so Victoria Hills being one of them and Chandramowat being the other one, to sit down with these gentlemen and their team to look at all the different options that they can partner with. We've got dollars from within the neighborhood associations. We've got the YMCA that's being funded through this program to work with just such groups just like this, and as Mayor Verbanovic mentioned, other groups that could be potential partners. So that's a question to you, Mark.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can take that. Certainly, that's our practice with any group. We've already done that. We can continue to do that. I think the reality of the situation here is that this group is looking for funding from the city. What you've heard from the staff and citizen evaluation committee is that the Tier 2 pot, that they don't approve or they don't recommend a grant through that Tier 2 pot. Trust me when I say staff have looked at all of the options. This is great work that this group is doing. The reality is there is some question about whether it's municipal jurisdiction or provincial jurisdiction. And so we will work with them to help them as much as we can. At the end of the day, we're not recommending that help includes money.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
I wanted to make a recommendation.
Okay. So I'll go first to Councillor Galloway-Sealock to get hers, and then we'll come to you after. Okay? Go ahead.
Yes, so my motion would simply replace on page 5-27 where it says peer and staff review committee recommendation, changing that from $3,000 to $4,400 to bring in the unallotted fund or unallotted monies that have already been dedicated to the Tier 2 community grants. So it's given them an additional $1,400 that we have money for that we can do to assist them with their programs, and then obviously assist them in trying to connect with other community granting organizations to help them offset the rest of those costs. So that would be my recommendation and motion.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
Well, my recommendation is very similar. I was prepared to approve the staff and committee recommendation with the exception of the one grant, which I would like to have dealt with separately. And on that grant, I would like to put forward a recommendation of a grant of $1,500, which would look after the school portion of it. I'm not prepared to put, and they're a good cause. They're wonderful. I have no problems with that, but we're getting outside of the area where we should be going.
Okay, so can you repeat that? Because are you?
Okay, well, I'm moving the recommendation before us.
Okay.
I just want to deal with that
one. You want to do that first, and
one
then deal
separate.
with
All the rest
okay.
are to go forward.
Okay, that's fine.
And
okay.
Thank you. Point of clarification, if I could. Councillor Gazzola, so the grant recommendation for the one we're on is $3,000. You're proposing that we reduce that to $1,500 from staff's recommendation? Or are you proposing an additional $1,500?
To cover, I don't want to double guess staff, but because we're having an opportunity to do so, I am. And I'm reducing it to $1,500 to just cover the one aspect of it.
From staff's recommendation of $3,000,
Yeah.
you're reducing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Singh?
A little speechless on that, but I'll just make my comments. I support Councillor Galloway-Selak's recommendation. I think if we look at what the intent of what Councillor Gazzola was saying, just for their homework program, their requirement's about $4,800, not $1,500. That's projected for next year. So if you were to lower it to $1,500, they wouldn't be able to make that programming requirement either. At least with the recommendation Councillor Galloway-Selak has put forward, they can go forward with some security of knowing that that programming can be facilitated and hopefully go back to their own membership and their own community and the business community citywide to look for additional funding, as well as some recommendations have been made through this discussion today that there are other avenues within the city, like Safe and Healthy Advisory Committee, that I recommend that you contact the appropriate staff and look at the term of reference and seeing how you can make that application forward. And I think the maximum amount is $2,000, but that will still go a long way to helping out and reaching your goal. So I'm just saying I will support the recommendation put forward.
Okay. Mayor Verbanovich?
Thank you. I will support the overall report and the new amount proposed by Councillor Galloway-Selak. I do know that this group is doing some very important and needed work in this neighborhood. I recognize, or in these neighborhoods, I should say. I recognize we can't be all things to all people. But at the same time, if we can help, I think it is important. I think it is something that I would also like to see staff continue to explore what other avenues maybe the group might have that we can try to send them towards, whether it's the region, whether maybe it's some other partner organizations in the community that might be helpful. I think there may be some other options there that can be considered. And obviously, if there is any stuff that's specifically related to space and so on, if we can try to accommodate that, I think that would be
that would be beneficial for everyone.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Councillor Galloway-Seelock, if you can, was your intention that this would be an ongoing increase, or was it just a one-time this year?
Just one time.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm worried that we may be building an expectation in here that if there's residual funds over, but okay, that helps. Thank you.
Okay, we have no further questions or comments. So with that, we will go with recorded vote on all of them. Okay. So we will deal with Councillor Galloway-Seelock first. Okay. Which is the addition of to fulfill the budget that's been appropriated to it. Okay. We have a recorded vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gazola's for the balance of his recommendation, which is, again, 1,500, did you say? Reduction? Oh, okay, the balance of the rest of the report. Sorry, I got confused there. Recorded vote. This is for the rest of the report. Yes. No, the first vote was the increase of the funding, and now we agreed to the increase of the funding now to the balance of the report, the tier group. Well, do you have questions? Okay. That's fine. You want to buzz in? Councillor Marsh?
Okay, thank you. All right, so first question is, I just have a couple questions. First one is, for the group on page 513 that submitted a budget that didn't look like it was for a City of Kitchener event, and yet they are naming the Hungarian Festival at Kitchener City Hall on August 14th, the Hungarians in Canada Association. I'm just curious, did staff have some back and forth discussion with them to clarify and give them an opportunity to change their budget, or no? Is that the policy?
Through the chair,
Yeah.
we normally do not, after the application deadline, because of the number we receive, we do not go back to the groups.
Right.
However, this group has applied in the past, and we have directed them to the process, which is to contact special event staff and get the details. This group did not do that. They submitted an application for an event. They picked the date without checking with staff, a venue without checking with staff, and the budget they submitted had nothing to do with the Kitchener event in itself. It was for the provincial, the different locations.
Yeah.
And we have talked to them over the last few years and directed them in our letters to contact special events to make arrangements and discuss the process, and then therefore make a better application, but they did not do that.
Okay, just was curious about that. And then on page, on page 517, the Spitfire Royal Canadian Air Cadets. This group, I'm just curious, are they a federal group, or is it I'm just curious about the nature of the cadets, and have we funded them? It looks like we funded them in the past.
Yes, I think this is the third or fourth year we funded them. I'd have to check their budgets in detail to find out where else they received their funding, but these are the local groups, and we're funding the pipe and drum bands of the portions.
No military activity is involved here.
It's for kids.
Well, I hope not.
Okay. And then the newcomer youth program, also just the next one down on 517, KWYMCA, I'm just curious, that's a very low budget. And they've asked for 5,000. Can you tell me if you had any discussion about possibly giving them their full amount, and if there's a good rationale why not?
Through the chair, when looking at their budgets, we determined they actually could fund it if with the 3,000. They had the resources in places where they could fund it.
Okay, thank you. So my last question is just around, all these amazing events and programs. Are these going to be on the Kitchener's events calendar website so that the community can know, these are all Kitchener-funded programs, or and to know more about what's going on in the city?
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the calendar on Kitchener.ca is fully accessible by the public, and so these organizers or any community member is able to put an event on the calendar.
But they don't, right? It's not a well-used calendar, is that
well,
the case?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is probably up for some debate. I think staff's perspective would be that this is a responsibility of the organization, that we don't have the staff to start to try to put through all of the different events. That's why we have created a calendar that allows the community groups to post them.
Okay, this is, I guess, for another topic for another time, but I really would like to see the events that we support be more readily accessible to the public in a format that's easy for them to understand that if groups are expected to post on that calendar, it would be good to have more direction towards that calendar on our website. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a couple of quick questions. On page 511, could I just confirm that the amounts for the Cherry Park Festival are correct? Because if they're not, I'm sure going to hear about it. They are correct.
Ms. Wilms?
Are correct. We were surprised too.
Okay. Wondered if someone had made a mistake. And on page 515, the Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery, just to double check, the grant was refused because the event is intended for cultural workers, not the general public. I failed to see the difference. Can someone explain the difference? Surely the cultural workers are the general public.
Ms. Wilms?
Through the chair, many of the grant requests do meet the criteria, and we have to decide what has the bigger impact. In this case, the general public is not invited to this. It's by invite only to cultural workers, so the benefit to the public at large was deemed to be lower in this case. The grant amount was for it was also a large amount, mainly to pay the people running it for the weekend. But in the end, with the limited dollars, a decision was made to not fund this because of the limited impact on the general public, the average person who would go to an event for free.
Okay, I understand. And lastly, on page 518, the Koi Music Festival. Do we have details in that application for the bands that are coming and other funding that they are receiving?
Through the chair, we have the details. They're not right in my head.
Sorry about that. This has come up elsewhere with other funders, and I was just curious if we have the details before the money is approved.
I understand the bands have not been confirmed yet. We don't have the details of that. And your other question?
The other question had to do with other funding from other groups. BIA, for example.
Their budget indicates revenues of $416,000, 105,000 sponsorships, 75 vendors and food drinks, 4,000 merchandising, drink sales of 32,000, revenue for ticket sales 116, and grants from Celebrate Ontario, Canada Summer Jobs, Ontario Music Fund, and City of Kitchener. So the city's portion is quite small.
Quite small and just no cash, is that correct? It's in kind?
It's all in kind, yes.
Okay. Might want to keep an eye on that one. Thank you.
Okay, noted. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this question is in line to what Councillor Marsh was saying, and I like that recommendation that it'd be nice to have these organizations post out their event on the community calendar. So part of our application process for Tier 2 grants, can we not make that as a requirement that after funding that they be mandated to post their event? Because it is a community-funded event, and we would want the wider community to take benefit from it. If it's a public event.
Ms. Williams?
Through the chair, I don't know the rules of posting on the city's website, but I assume if we're funding the event, it's something that would meet the criteria, but I'd have to check into it.
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I recall from writing that policy about 7 years ago, yes, you can absolutely direct us to do that. And when we inform the groups of their Tier 2 grant allocation each year, we would tell them that one of the requirements is to post it on the city's website.
Great.
Now, I think I should just be clear, these are not all one-off events all the time, so where it makes sense, we would do that.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it's in there. If it's a public event, whatever it be, one-off or not, I think if it's posted there and the community knows on any given day what's happening in our great city, that's what's the type of vibrancy that we're trying to build. So can staff take that as direction, or do you need a vote on that?
Probably not a bad idea to pass a motion on that.
Okay, that would be my motion. So.
Okay, well, we'll pass that on when... Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Councillor Singh beat me to the punch, but and with all due respect, it was Councillor Marsh's suggestion. I'd really like to see her make that motion. I just going there. Just two quick questions about the museum. The Ideas of Transcending Objects 5-25. We're giving them $2,500. I'm trying to struggle with understanding what's happening here, because the museum gets funding from us already, but that's more operational. I don't know that they get any funding for events, do they? Or can you clarify that?
Tier 1.
Ms. Williams?
Through the chair, they get a Tier 1 in-kind grant for parking and maintenance, which is just in kind. They also receive some funding through the Arts and Culture Sustainability Fund. This is for a one-time special event that they are permitted to seek a Tier 2 grant for, which they did. This is a one-time only event they wish to have.
Okay, thanks for that. And I'm sure we've asked this question before, but I just want to make sure. So I'm looking at the Victim Services of Waterloo Region, for example. That's one of the many examples here. When we don't give them funding and we've identified that it's really not our responsibility, we redirect them, right, to other avenues, or do we not?
Generally, we don't. It's up to the group to find out. It'd be difficult for us to find out what avenues there are, whether they're regional, provincial, federal, which change regularly, so they have to do that homework. Okay. If they ask for advice, we certainly would offer it, but it's up to the group to do their research on the funding sources available to them.
Yeah, but I think it's challenging sometimes for some groups to find that information.
And we do provide support when we're asked.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
Are all the questions done?
All the questions are, you're the last one, because...
No, I just want to make a comment on my recommendation.
You can
I
go
have
ahead.
no questions.
Okay, you can make a comment.
I have moved the recommendation, although I do not agree with all of the suggestions that are coming through in whole. I will move the recommendation. I just wanted to make a comment that going down the road, I would like to see participants in programs where possible provide more funding rather than always coming to the municipality. The taxing authorities have put in some changes into income tax legislation where their people's children are now able to deduct amounts for taking part in recreational and in cultural activities. And I think by the government taking that action, it should give a bit of relief to municipalities in having to give out these grants. And so I would like organizations to have a little look at that, a deeper look at that in future going forward, and asking the participants who really get the greatest benefit out of them, perhaps putting some funding towards it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. No questions. Just wanted to take a moment to thank the staff and peer review committee. It was, I know it's no small task to go through, 61, I believe, applications, and whittling that down. And the fact that we've had just a single delegation appealing, I think, speaks to how closely they went through all of this. And I'm also happy to see that committee is almost completely adhering to the staff recommendation at this point, because unless we want to start getting reports as thick as Ms. Willem's binder over there, I think we have to have a lot of trust in the process. So thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
So I'll move at the appropriate time that we direct staff to include a request, or actually a direction to all the people who receive, the organizations that receive funding, to put their events when appropriate on the website.
Okay, and with that, we'll vote on that. Recorded vote?
Recorded vote. The Marsh.
And that's carried unanimously. And the remainder of the report moved by Councillor Gazzola. That's a recorded vote as well? I'm sorry, can you, if you want to talk, I can. Okay. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, we will move on to our consent items. And do we have a mover for the consent items? Councillor Fernandez. Do we have any questions on the consent items? Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I do have a question on the noise exemption for New Dundee Road. And I have been in conversations with the residents who have been impacted by this activity that's going on. They are in support of the noise exemption, but they are asking, and Mr. Tiega, I just wanted to understand what is the time frame. I know that we're talking about till June 30th. That's a really long time. And what would happen if we had to extend it beyond that?
Mr. Tiega?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? What will happen if we don't extend?
Well, no, I understand the rationale for extending, because part of it is the makeup of the soils and how we're boring through to try and get this done, the tunneling done as quick as possible. But I was out speaking with the resident that is being impacted by this for the majority, and I guess they wanted to know that June 30th was an attainable date.
I believe it is, but if there is a problem, we certainly will come back to council.
Okay. My other question was in the report it identifies the significantly high water table in this area, And of course, Roseville Swamp is immediately on the opposite side of this road. So have we been making sure that any implications from this work has been monitored by the GRCA and the Minister of the Environment?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. If they are involved, I will assume they are in a project of this nature, but I can't be specific with respect to the level of their involvement with this project.
Okay, all right. What I'll do is I'll take a moment and send you an email offline, and hopefully we can just make sure that the impacts are not being felt through Roseville Swamp, because it's significant amount of noise and a lot of vibration. The residents have been noticing it as well. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, we have no further questions. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And so we'll move on to the last item of discussion, which is regarding item number 4, neighborhood parking regulations for special events. And Mr. Turner is going to present staff's report. Welcome, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just make some brief comments and then open it up for questions. The issue that's being discussed in this report has its origins in the discussions we had around the neighborhood in McLennan Park during the lead up to Big Music Fest last year. So you will hear me make mention of Big Music Fest on a few occasions, but I want to make it clear to Council that the concept we're talking about is something that could be applied at any event across the city. Those discussions during Big Music Fest really focused on how we could support the neighborhood by relieving the impact of parking stresses on their street due to event parkers. And what we, as we got into the discussions and realized that the plans for shuttle buses and off-site parking lots and that sort of stuff was coming to fruition through Mr. Young's work, we found that the cost of most of the parking tickets you typically see issued in residential neighborhoods was not much of a deterrent. So, for example, in some cases, the fine amounts for certain types of tickets were the equivalent of what it would cost to park a distance away and take the shuttle bus. So it really didn't create much of a deterrent. So staff had indicated to this council and the ward council that we would take a look at this for future events. And during our review, we looked at what happened during Big Music Fest, and we determined that the approach we took, which was to take a close look at enforcing and applying resources to enforcing the existing regulations as opposed to developing new regulations that, around emergency no parking or closing streets, that didn't make sense. The approach we took made sense as a reasonable approach, and it balanced the needs of the neighborhood with the event itself. So with that in mind, we decided to look at what existing how we could work within existing regulations, but also increase the deterrent effect. And increasing the deterrent effect, particularly for the event parkers, and building in safeguards for residential parking, or for the resident parking, I should say. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we focused on supporting the neighbors without making the parking issue the focal point of the event. We want the event to stand on its own, and we don't want parking to be the main focal point before, during, or after the event. So what we're proposing today is a mechanism whereby council can place a special event parking designation on any event is deemed appropriate. And while that designation is in place, the typical residential parking fines would increase. And they would increase for that specified area during that specified time frame based on council's designation. To give you an example of some of those violations that would apply in your typical residential setting would be the applicable time limit, which usually is 3 hours. Sometimes it's 2 hours in some of the areas in the downtown area, but it's typically 3 hours. Or no parking or no stopping areas, blocked driveways, sidewalks, and fire hydrants. And it's also important to understand that the designation process that we're proposing here provides the flexibility that it can be used for any type of special event where it's deemed appropriate, or it can be discontinued if from one year to the next if it's determined that it's not the appropriate approach, or modified perhaps. So those are the comments in terms of the mechanism. What staff are proposing as a first step is to build into the mechanism an increased fine that would see whatever the fine is now doubled during that special event. So, for example, a 3-hour limit, a ticket would be would increase from $20 to $40. A sidewalk violation could increase from 25 to 50, and so on. So, what we're trying to do is work with the neighborhoods. The system would, or the mechanism would also allow for special consideration. So, for example, during Big Music Fest, we applied the 3-hour limit, but we also exempted residents and their guests to a maximum of 2 parking permits per address. So those types of flexibilities are still available on an event-by-event basis. And again, I'm repeating myself in that this mechanism is purely flexible to be applied or discontinued or modified from one year to the next or one event to the next. The last comment that I would make is that we're really focusing on deterrence and prevention. This isn't about increasing fines to increase fine revenue. Our hope is that the messaging around strict enforcement during a special event or increased fines during a special event will actually lead to less violations by relieving the stress on the neighborhood. So with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have several questions. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the ward councillor is very happy to have this report come back, as that was a big issue during last year's concert. The fact that the normal ticket costs were just not a deterrent. Glad to see it being doubled to 40 or 50 respectively. Is that enough, though? Is that enough of a deterrent in your mind, or we may have to revisit this at a later time?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's entirely possible that we would revisit this. Increasing fines from one year to the next takes a bit of work, but it's not insurmountable. It's all about timing. Again, what we're hoping is that the message around an increased fine, regardless of what the amount is, the fact that the fine has doubled or increased to whatever ratio council deems appropriate, we hope that has the deterrent effect. So people that are parking will not necessarily know from one moment to the next that this violation is X amount or whatever. I think that really it's just driving home the message that there's going to be strict enforcement and the fines have increased, is hopefully that will have the deterrent effect. If it doesn't, then we can talk later.
Right.
One of the concerns that I found, if I could, through my experience, is that sometimes if fines are increased perhaps to a higher than expected level, it draws attention that we really don't want to have drawn to the event.
Sure. No, and I agree with that it has to be an amount that we can justify and argue in court as well, and we don't want more people to challenge the ticket, as one of my colleagues referenced this when I was talking about this report. Can you just quickly tell me what type of fines really are there? So in my mind, I think it's over the time limit and no parking. Are there others other than in front of a fire hydrant or whatever?
Yeah, so I'll just run through the ones that we typically would see in a residential neighborhood and had some experience using Big Music Fest. So the 3-hour limit is $20. No parking area is $25. No stopping area is $40. We don't see a lot of those unless there's a school or perhaps a park involved in a residential zone. Sidewalks, boulevards, and fire hydrants are $25. So our proposal is that whatever the fine amount is, simply gets doubled.
So mostly with, when we're looking at a special event circumstance, typically we're looking at either the time limit or the no parking or sidewalk. So the $25 or the $20 fines currently.
That's correct, yes.
Would it be easier to communicate if we were to increase both those to, say, just the $50 overall? So that way when we're pointing this information out to deter people from doing so, that we can easily say, infractions will be $50 per vehicle, whatever the case is. Is that easier rather than just saying doubling and then not really knowing what the true cost is? Or I'm taking your opinion in case I want to make any recommendations change.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll be perfectly honest in saying I'm not really sure, since we haven't really done this type of an approach before outside of the snow event, which is a similar process, but focuses on a much larger area. So not trying to avoid the question, I'm just not really sure which one is better. I will say that we would certainly work within whatever council's direction is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Justin?
Through the chair, I'd just like to add to that. The fine structure set up for the no stopping anytime, for instance, there's usually reasons around that, traffic safety reasons around it. So the idea of doubling the fines would still promote people not utilizing those spaces. If they're all at the same level, it may encourage people to park in no stopping zones, which could have some traffic safety impacts. So I'd just like to add that.
Okay. Thanks. Councillor Councillor Singh, you want to?
I just wanted to say I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Schneider?
Yeah, just on this, how would the designation come about? Would you make a recommendation to council and we vote on that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly the process. What our legal staff have asked us as part of the designation process, as opposed to simply a resolution of council, they would like to see a bylaw passed, and it would be a simple one-pager bylaw passed. And the reason for that is around producing evidence in court that the special event is in fact in place. So it's really an evidentiary rule that's easier to introduce a bylaw versus a council motion into the court proceedings if it ever got to that point. So what we would do is for whatever the special event is, and again I'll use Big Music Fest or the blanket exemptions for downtown special events, that designation bylaw would be part of that report, and we would put it forward after some consultation with the appropriate parties in the neighborhood and that sort of stuff. So it would come in the form of a very simple bylaw exemption that staff would initiate.
Okay, and would we have signage in the area just warning people of this?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, and I may look to Mr. Reedman to supplement my comments, but with the existing special events that we have, including Big Music Fest now, our transportation planning staff have a very good parking strategy in place in terms of appropriate signage at different locations. So the signage is already there. It's already built into our special events process, so we would add that messaging to the existing signage. So we wouldn't be looking at having to increase dollars for signage because the mechanism is already in place.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick points. In Shane, in Victoria Park, the events in the park, if there's a, well, first of all, it would apply to people living on park streets in the neighborhood?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it would if that was council's desire. Again, if we have a discussion and it's appropriate that some of or all of the events in Victoria Park are such a nature that they impact some of the residential streets, we could invoke this designation. So it's at the will of council.
Yeah, I'm talking about major ones. We already have emergency parking designations on some streets during major events. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Then these provisions would apply to your typical residential street where we haven't already invoked special circumstances. So if we've got an emergency no parking area because it's an access route to the event, or it's for parking for disabled or whatever it might be, that wouldn't apply. This would be where it's typically just a residential street with nothing specific during the event.
Okay. And just remind me, when we have that kind of special event, do those residents get the kind of passes that you're talking about? To park on the street and have a guest park on the street? Do they or don't they?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the comment that I made regarding what was in place for a Big Music Fest was specific to that event.
Okay.
Actually Special Events does some communications with the neighborhoods around Victoria Park, given the number of events. And I know that some residents are provided passes, but I don't believe the passes allow them to park on the street. I think what it does is it allows them to access a street when a street is closed. But I would look to Mr. Young if he could provide some
No,
clarification.
that is correct. They do get access to the area when there's a special event going. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that last point. I thought they received permits to park for special events. But you're saying no, that it's just the permit doesn't allow them to park there?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, I'm talking about the events around Victoria Park in the downtown. The residents, the passes that the residents get is an access permit, not necessarily a parking permit. The permits that the residents around McLennan Park got for Big Music Fest did allow for 2 vehicles to park on the street.
Okay, so they were actual permits for the street.
For Big Music Fest, that's correct, sir.
Did they have the opportunity to sell those permits?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my thought is, and I think a general consensus was that those permits were shared with friends and family, whether there was a dollar value or not. I suspect there probably was. That's not really something that we could control.
You referred to it about signage, that it's not going to add any cost because there's already signage there. But do we actually put special signs around during that, for example, Big Music Fest?
Through the chair, we only put signs at the main or at all the entrance points to the neighborhood, so that's what we would do in this instance as well.
And it would be easy enough to include the indication on there that fines will be doubled.
Yes.
I mean, and I just wanted to mention that we see that on the highways all the time. When you're in a construction area, the fines are doubled, so people are quite familiar with that concept. Does this bylaw that you're going to pass, or going to bring forward, covers the entire city? It covers the entire city in that it can be called upon.
To you, Mr. Chairman, that's correct, yes. It provides a mechanism for any special event anywhere in the city at any given time, again, subject to council
Passing a
designation.
resolution.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Is this going to apply to the odd?
To you, Mr. Chairman, it can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks. The only thing I wanted to ask about is around the messaging, which I think is probably important, that people don't think that because we have a special event that all of a sudden we're doing a cash grab by increasing the parking. So do you have a sense of how you'll do the messaging? Of course, around special events we have all kinds of social media and all kinds of information that goes out to the public generally. Will you tag on to that as well?
To you, Mr. Chairman, using Big Music Fest as an example and a model for other types of events, there was a lot of communication with the public, specified communication with ticket purchasers online. They received a lot of information around the shuttle bus service and the parking enforcement or the parking rules being strictly enforced. And I'm looking to Mr. Young to if he wishes to add anything, but just given the different vehicles or media vehicles that we have to get the message out, I believe the message was clear during Big Music Fest. The issue was the fine amount just wasn't what it probably should have been.
Yeah. No, I'm saying going forward, really, for future events, I guess it's because that was more of an unusual situation first time we had done it. So we had to find all kinds of avenues to make sure that we dealt with the parking and the parking concerns for the residents. But any future events, my expectation would be that your messaging would be in collaboration with everything that's going on around that event. Is that?
Mr. Young?
Through the chair. For Big Music Fest, yeah, absolutely, because we have that ability to communicate with the ticket purchasers that are coming to the event. For something like a Victoria Park area, we have a mail-out that goes out to those residents every year outlining the events and what their closures would be. That would be an easy tag-on to let people know that these specific events, should any of them be noted with this bylaw or be subject to it, that we could put that in the letter.
Yeah, I think it's important because I don't want us to be suddenly perceived as, oh, there's a special event and so the city wants to make extra money off of us. We really were just trying to make sure that we ensure safe ability for safe movement of vehicles and especially EMS and that kind of stuff. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have no further questions? Councillor Singh, you want to speak to your motion or the recommendation?
Yeah, there's not really that much I want to speak to other than I'm moving the recommendation, and after hearing staff's point regarding no stoppage, I can understand that it's not as easy as just having a set fee. But to that point, it would be advisable if part of the recommendation, I could ask bylaw to report back to council looking at Big Music Fest 2015 as a test case for this increased fine to see how it was administered in the ward and what the results were. And that at that point, then we can look to see if there are any changes that are necessary or we have a good model. So,
okay, thanks. I have a few comments. I just want to, again, thank staff for doing a terrific job. This is excellent stuff that you brought forward to us. I fully support this recommendation. I think this new bylaw will be a very effective tool when used to deter unwanted parking in those neighborhoods when they're affected by a special event. And I'm glad to hear that there'll be some proper messaging out there too, so that the public understands that this is not just for a cash grab. This is just to actually police and make sure that these roads are safe for our residents. And with that, no recorded vote. Recorded vote has been called. And that's been carried unanimously again. Great job. And that concludes our council. Okay. I'm glad the mic was off on that one. Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, since Mr. Reedman is still in the room, I just wanted to just ask a couple of questions. I guess we have to bring it out of information into discussion on the school-related traffic impacts on adjoining neighborhoods. Is that what we have to? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'd like to move that out of information into a discussion. I have a couple of questions I want to ask Mr.
Sure.
Reedman.
Are everyone okay with that? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. I know that I've been part of the whole Active and Safe Routes to School committee and gone to a number of meetings. My concern is that we're only going to be targeting other Ontario municipalities. Which ones would we be targeting? And school boards with the survey that you're planning on creating. Is that enough input? And it's really kind of one-sided.
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, a lot of the questions we'll be asking deal with provincial policies, so it may not be as appropriate to get some of that information from other municipalities. We could always do sort of an assessment scan to see what other places are doing, but some of that information may not be as applicable within Ontario.
Sorry, it said in the report on page 3, develop and administer a survey to other Ontario municipalities and school boards. So.
Through the chair, yes, but outside of the province of Ontario, there may be
I
issues.
wasn't suggesting that. I apologize. What I was actually suggesting was that, oops, sorry, I'm really loud here, is that we engage the school councils, because I think it's really, they represent the community, and I think it would be a pretty easy opportunity to meet with or send the surveys out to school councils. So is that something we could consider doing?
Through the chair, we can where we are able to get contact information and willing councils that are able to participate.
Okay, I think that would be very helpful, because really right now what we're finding is I had a resident send me a bunch of pictures again around one of the schools in my ward, and I just don't know how kids are getting across the road safely. So I'm really glad we're doing this. I just wonder if what is our anticipated, you're saying September 2015, that we hope to have some kind of suggestions and
Through the chair, when this was originally brought forward in January, staff had identified that we have a staffing issue related to this, that we need about 6 to 8 months' time to be able to administer the survey, bring it to the working group, do the proper consultation with affected agencies, and then come back to council. So that's our target date based on our existing staffing resources and the work that needs to be completed.
Okay. You just mentioned working group. Is that what I saw on page 3? So the stakeholders that were mentioned there.
Through the chair, we intend to bring this to the Active and Safe Routes to School Committee, and then host a workshop where any member of council, whether it be city council, regional council, or other councillors or school board trustees, are able to come out and participate further in the dialogue.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I think this is something that a lot of parents have been waiting for a while, so I appreciate the work that staff will be doing on this.
Yeah, I too want to echo those comments. I think that this is a rather important issue, and I did receive a phone call this morning about this issue, and so this was a timely report. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that discussion later on. Okay, and that concludes our Community Infrastructure Services Committee meeting. Have a nice day.